All right, US President Donald Trump and his approval ratings are somewhat of a complex ball game. The reason why we say this is because nearly after 8 months of his second term as the President of America, Americans have now given their verdict on how they think that their president has performed. In several areas, that is. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll in recent days, Trump's approval rating stood at just 42%. Which is nearly the figure recorded by other prominent polls as well. The 5-day survey conducted over 1,000 adults nationwide showed a staggering 56% of respondents simply disapprove of Trump's presidential performance so far. Compared to previous polls, this Reuters Ipsos poll included a slight change to its method as well, because not giving the respondents the option to say not sure about the president's overall performance status. What else does the poll show? Well, the poll reveals that Trump has fared well in certain areas, such as handling of crime and immigration, with 43% approving his crime management and 42% saying he is doing a good job on immigration. No surprise there, of course, because in recent days, Trump has been ramping up his federal takeover plan in places like Washington, D.C., Boston, and even Chicago. And going full throttle in deployment of National Guards and also ICE agents to control crime rates. Not just that, also to crack down on illegal immigrants who have settled in these areas. Now, where has the US president tanked? The areas where he has not performed well. It's the economy and jobs, which reportedly have turned out to be his poorest performing sectors. Up until last year, the American economy was set up to be a model that the world could follow. Time and again, it has been used as an electoral plank by all contenders in the race to power. But what remained veiled among this was the anxiety felt by many Americans, which made them to vote for Trump. However, since his return to office, economy has turned out to be one of the poorest performing sectors, areas with the ratings falling drastically. 53% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy, while just 36% approve. 30% of respondents supported the president's handling of the cost of living for US households. Now, the timing of this poll also coincided with the latest job report released on Friday. The economy added just 22,000 jobs in August, which was worse than what experts predicted. On Tuesday, federal officials found that the US added 911,000 fewer jobs in the 12 months, that's through March, than what was earlier reported. This adds up to America's job crisis, one of the key issues that plagues America's youth, with college graduates, postgraduates, and people who hold highest qualifications in America left without a job or even any kind of an economic support. Heavy rains and relentless flooding have submerged rice crops in both India and Pakistan, driving up the prices of basmati rice. The heavy flooding in both the countries, from above average rainfall and overflowing rivers in late August and early this month, is now expected to affect the supply of rice crop. Touted a staple as well as a delicacy in many areas, the aromatic basmati rice grown in India and Pakistan sells for nearly twice the price of regular varieties and is primarily imported by UK, West Asia and the United States of America. Now, India's northern states of Punjab and Haryana alone contribute over 80% of the country's total basmati rice, while Pakistan's Punjab province accounts for more than 90% of its output. And experts now predict that Punjab could likely see at least 20 to 25% drop in basmati output in 2024 and 2025. That's the duration. Punjab had around 40% share in India's basmati rice export of 6.07 million tons. And this time around, the expectations of a bumper harvest were cut short by the intense flooding situation. But not just basmati. According to government official, initial assessments indicate that crops such as paddy, cotton and pulses on nearly 1 million hectares were also affected in Punjab and Haryana. In Pakistan too, besides rice, sugarcane, corn, vegetables and cotton on thousands of hectares were submerged earlier this month. In the flood-hit Punjab province, thus adding to farmers' woes, both in India and Pakistan. Both the countries' paddy seedlings are usually transplanted in June, July, with harvesting starting in late September. And to maximize sales, traders have raised prices by $50 per ton over the past week, which shoot even further, as per experts, if supply shortages persists. However, some suggest that the current price rise is temporarily fueled by reports of crop damage and could ease once the new season's harvest arrive. It was a high-stakes day in Europe. Poland called its NATO allies for urgent talks. And that's after alleging that Russian drones violated Polish airspace. That's during attacks by Russia on Ukraine. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk warned the situation is perhaps edging dangerously close to an open conflict. He said that Poland's airspace was breached 19 times. 3 drones were shot down, and NATO allies scrambled jets. Across Europe, leaders are up in arms, hurling accusations at Moscow for provoking conflict. So much so that Poland announced that it is invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which calls for urgent talks within the bloc. So what does Russia have to say about all of this, about the accusations leveled by Poland? It has rubbished all allegations. Russia has accused Poland of spreading myths. Russia has said that Warsaw has not given any evidence backing its claims. So, what really happened? Who is lying and who is telling the truth? Was this perhaps a deliberate provocation by Russia, or a Russian misstep? Or perhaps is NATO overreacting at all of this? Here is the latest as to what exactly happened. Russia's defense ministry says it struck Ukraine and that no targets in Poland were planned. Moscow asserted what it has been saying throughout the day, that its drones have a range of 700 kilometers, and I quote Moscow here, "These concrete facts fully debunk the myths once again being spread by Poland to further escalate the Ukraine crisis," unquote. Well, early in the day, footage posted by local media showed firefighters and police in the village of WION in eastern Poland. They were seen inspecting a house that you see on your screens right now, with its roof ripped open and debris scattered from what seemed to be a drone strike. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called the situation serious and said Poland should prepare for such scenarios.
We are most likely dealing with a large-scale provocation. But at the same time, we are in consultation with our allies. I am in constant contact with the NATO Secretary-General. This is so that in the coming hours and days and in the future, we can respond to this type of threat as effectively as we did tonight.
Poland said it shot down Russian drones that entered its airspace that violated Polish airspace. That's when Russia launched its attack on Ukraine. Warsaw called it an act of aggression. In yet another region, the Polish police found a damaged drone in Czosnowka, and the district prosecutor's office discovered components near Chesenki. Now, Russian drones and missiles have reportedly entered NATO airspace before in the nearly 4 years of Ukraine war. But this is the first time that a NATO member has shot them down. Well, NATO chief Mark Rutte praised the alliance's air defenses, calling Moscow's actions reckless. Not just him. EU foreign policy chief has warned that Europe's response has not been strong enough all this while. The UK said that it is mulling options to strengthen NATO's air defence over Poland.
As your NATO ally, we will support you, our Polish friends. As your NATO ally, we will play our part to help secure the safety of your people. And following our discussions today, I've asked our UK armed forces to look at options to bolster NATO's air defence over Poland.
And Germany, it called that the drone incursion into Poland was deliberate. It was purposeful by Russia. Take a listen.
As I just said in the German parliament, there is no evidence whatsoever that this amount of drones flew over this route over Poland, Polish territory, by accident. In any case, there is no need to fly over this route between Belarus and Ukraine. This means that it can be assumed that this was a deliberate action.
Russia's top diplomat in Poland, Andrzej Ordash, was summoned to Warsaw's foreign ministry on Wednesday. So, across the Atlantic, what's happening? Still silence from the White House, but on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are raising the alarm. Democrat Senator Dick Durbin warned that all these violations are a fair warning and a direct test of NATO's resolve to defend Poland and the Baltics. And Republican Joe Wilson went a little further ahead, calling it an act of war. He urged sanctions to bankrupt Putin's war machine and demanded more arms for Ukraine to strike back. Remember, Poland is a major backer of Ukraine, hosting more than 1 million refugees and also serving as a critical transit point for not just Western aid, but also weapons. Now, the alleged intrusion of Russian drones into Polish airspace is now being seen as one of the most serious tests of NATO's readiness in years. The entire incident has Europe still reeling. For now, NATO can say that its response was swift, but doubts remain. Can Europe afford to shoot million-dollar missiles or stealth fighter jets each time a drone which is worth a fraction of that enters their airspace, when perhaps there's an active war in their own backyard? Experts warn NATO's strategy still lags behind Russia's growing drone and missile power. So, if it wants war, the question is, can it afford it? Poland may be the front line, but Putin, the Russian president, is testing the entire alliance. And that's the challenge European members of NATO will have to deal with. Well, even as Russia denies the drone attack, experts say that the incident could be a way of Moscow sending a clear message to the European capitals. Don't engage in supporting Ukraine. Take a look.
Russia is using this to signal that it does not want war, but it's trying to do so from a position of strength by warning NATO countries that war is a strong possibility if they provide troops to Ukraine. This is what has been under discussion in the West in recent weeks, the possibility that should there be a peace agreement, that NATO troops will become peacekeepers in Ukraine. And this is something Russia does not want and does not want to provoke war with NATO. So they are trying to warn off NATO members at this point to avoid sending their troops to Ukraine with the message that this could lead to war.
All right, now the news after weeks of fierce battles over tariffs and India's purchase of Russian oil. Washington now seems to be softening. US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi have agreed to resume trade negotiations, signaling a possible thaw in ties. Trump announced on social media, and I quote him here, "I'm pleased to announce that India and the United States of America are continuing negotiations to address the trade barriers between our two nations. I look forward to speaking with my very good friend, Prime Minister Modi, in the upcoming weeks. I feel certain that there will be no difficulty in coming to a successful conclusion for both of our great countries," unquote. Prime Minister Modi responded shortly after, saying that he was looking forward to speaking with the US President and that the US and India are close friends and natural partners, unquote. But this softening did not happen in a vacuum. Far from it. Last month, the US blindsided India with punishing 50% tariffs on most of its exports to America. That percentage is higher than almost any other country. And the reason? India's legal and sovereign right to buy discounted Russian oil for its own energy needs. But the US president did not stop there. Trump and his aides warned of further levies to punish India, quote unquote, for what it sees as funding the Russian war machine amid the Ukraine war. With its oil purchases, Washington's tariff move was overreaching, completely unjustified, and entirely unwarranted. So India pushed back, asserting that as a sovereign nation, it can decide where and how it buys energy, standing firm on its policy of non-alignment and strategic autonomy. In the days after the tariffs were announced, Prime Minister Modi pushed for self-reliance, urging Indian businesses to put up boards of Swadeshi and Made in India outside their establishments. Not just that, he urged Indians to take pride in Indian-made goods and rather decried economic selfishness of the world. Then came the tax cuts, well, pretty much ahead of India's festival season to boost consumption. Prime Minister Modi also strengthened ties with China and Russia, up to those that US considers its rivals. Perhaps New Delhi sent a clear message. The pushback is now forcing Washington to reconsider its actions. You see, despite multiple rounds of failed trade talks, discussions between India and US have continued behind the scenes. Both the sides are keeping the door open, and experts say that Trump's shift reflects a realization that the abrupt punitive measures are straining strategic bilateral ties with India. But at the same time, he is also signaling to the European Union to take the lead in pressuring India and China over Russian oil. Trump has reportedly told EU officials that he is ready to join them. That is, if the European Union imposes sweeping tariffs on India and China. He thinks that this way, this strategy, it will pressure the Russian President Vladimir Putin into joining ceasefire talks with Ukraine to end the war. The US has told EU that it is willing to mirror any tariffs imposed by Europe. So at this point of time, and from where we are sitting, it looks extremely confusing. Well, that's the US President Donald Trump for you. Experts say that this strategy shows that the US wants the EU to take the next step while reducing America's immediate bilateral strain with India. Remember, the EU and India are also negotiating a free trade agreement, and reports say that officials are looking to lock such a deal by end of the year. So the bottom line is this: the US is not backing down from India completely, but the aggressive posture has been somewhat softened. It is less about punishment right now and more about diplomacy, signaling a temporary climb down, if you may, as a response to India's stern pushback, and also the strategic importance of this trade relationship between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. For now, diplomacy is taking center stage. Trump and Modi's agreement to talk shows that even in the midst of trade tensions, strategic partnerships and dialogue can win out over conflict. The next few weeks could define the future of US-India trade ties, and that we will be tracking very closely.